1 second. I'll be ready in 1 second. Ladies and gentlemen, I just want to make a little announcement. I know I just told all of you. Tomorrow evening, we have a committee meeting again at 4 o'clock. If we could be finished with that committee meeting by 6. EL Habits Builders is hoping to have the lights on at the Rice Theater, the new marquee, to have the lights on, and we'd like all of you to come over and celebrate with that. Okay? Just a reminder of that. So they're working really hard and hoping to have that on. Mr. Fogelman? Yes, sir. It's all yours.
Okay. Zoning and Annexation Committee will convene. We do have a quorum present. What we have on the agenda for today is basically an open discussion with regard to the parameters and the dealings with Gateway Overlay District. We've run into some problems, or for lack of a better way of phrasing it, we've run into some situations where we have properties that have typically been used in one particular way that we're now dealing with the inability for the structure to continue to operate in a way that it had in the past. And we're trying to entertain whether or not there are some viable options, or maybe kind of discuss what, if anything, could be done to address the matter. And I would basically open the topic for discussion at this point. Does anyone have anything in particular dealing with Gateway Overlay and the districts that have been created that they would like to
Mr.
address?
Fogelman,
Yes.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Hold on 1 second, please. And Ms. Jones telling me that the recorder's not recording.
Oh, well, good.
Sorry.
That's all right. That's okay.
Our live feed is recording those.
Oh, our live.
That one is recording. I did it. I did it tonight. It's John. The machine is not recording. When I press the record button, it's recording.
Coming, yeah. They're coming, they're on their way with another card, folks, for the recorder.
We are recording on the live
Okay.
feed. Now, I know y'all need it there as well.
Yes, ma'am. We apologize. Okay. All right, here we go. Sorry about the delay.
Okay, Special Committee of Zoning and Annexation will convene. All members of the committee are present. I'd like to say that I requested this special meeting at the request of committee members as well as fellow council members, all of whom have been invited today, and would welcome comments from not only committee members but fellow councilmen as well. The topic for discussion today deals with the gateway overlay districts that were created in the adoption of the Gateway Overlay Plan, where 4 distinct districts were created representing various entrances to the city. Criteria with regard to each of these districts is contained in the definition and explanation of the program, as well as prohibitions. We've reached or been greeted with a number of issues that have arisen, and felt that maybe the best way to do this would be just to have an open discussion on what, if anything, could possibly be done. With that said, I would basically open the floor for any discussion involving the topic. Is there anyone that has anything in particular that they would like to raise? Clint, more than welcomed.
Okay, just reading over this, it seems like there was a request to do it only in a certain district, which I wasn't aware of. I thought if we were going to do something, it would be for all of the overlay.
I think the memo provided defines exactly that. I think the issues that have arisen out of specific districts that may cause a question to exist there, but no, I don't think the approach is to tailor any particular district any different than another.
Okay, well, the first paragraph kind of led me to believe that we were going after the West District instead of all of the districts. But that being said, another thing I was wondering about is if we leave it like it is now, would it be possible for any property owner or business to go before the, the Planning and Zoning Commission or whatever it is, and run it by them to get an exemption, and then if they approve it or disapprove it, then they would provide the council with their thoughts and their opinion of whether we should or should not do it? Would that be a better way to do this, and do it on an individual basis instead of doing it as a blanket? So we're going to let, I don't know, let's just say vehicle repair shops go up anywhere in any of the overlay? Could it be that they'd have to go through the Planning and Zoning Commission first, get their opinion come to the council, then the council would have the right to either say yay or nay on these things on an individual basis and not on a blanket thing? That's the only thing I'm thinking.
I think it's a valid question, and I think that's something that maybe at this point we should refer to legal, Mr. Reagan, on the answer.
Now you're ready.
Now I'm ready, okay. Okay, let me say that the issue arose in the West District by request of a specific property owner to open a used car lot, have used car lot sales. That was my understanding as to why this came up, and there was an individual property that was being discussed at the initial meetings regarding this. So one of my concerns, as I pointed out to you, is that the legal problems with that is the selective treatment and possible discrimination claims you would be subject to by changing it for a single district, because all of these districts were found to have and still do have the identical characteristics of each one, with the types of businesses that were prohibited being looked at as businesses that there were already sufficient numbers of those in these areas, and that it was better to prohibit those uses than to allow them to continue opening businesses or reopening businesses that were closed. And that I assume was the reason. These overlay ordinances, by the way, have a number of the criteria that are required in addition to not in addition to, but in the event that a special condition would be to be granted by the planning commission, you would still have all the provisions that require the scrutiny of the planning commission as far as a site plan, facade improvement, that sort of thing, that would still be applicable to these. If you've read, if I point out that there are certain provisions that follow in the ordinance in the sections identified in the brief little memo I gave you that deal with the driveway requirements, access and management, the facade improvement, that sort of thing. Then it grants the planning commission authority to require or limit driveways, and it allows the planning commission the ability to require things or not require things. So you've got some of that already involved in the process. But as I think, Clint, you're right. If you do this, if you make any kind of an exception that only applies to one district, then that would be unfair. And I would not. I think you've got the gist of reading my memo that that I'm really trying to raise an objection to that kind of treatment.
So basically, Tom, like what Clint said, would it be better to take it on a one-on-one basis as far as a variance goes?
I'm not sure that's the answer, because once you do a one-on-one basis, everybody's going to opt for that rather than going through the filing. They're going to ask for a special permit rather than following the ordinance. So you basically got a situation where every prohibited use, if I'm an attorney or I'm a reasonably astute landowner, I'm going to say, well, why go through all that? And if I can get the planning commission maybe to waive all of these things and let me do what I want to do by a special condition. So you basically said, it would apply to all of I think you'd have to apply it to all the prohibited uses, not just these two.
Yeah, well, I agree with that.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, I think if you do that, just so you understand, that basically, but I don't know that would be a problem if it applies uniformly. If it applies uniformly and the planning commission still has the ability to require all of these things, I think that's a good idea in terms of that sense, because it allows the planning commission, which is designed to give you the guidance and approval of what needs to be done to improve the areas, by saying, okay, yeah, we think we'll give you a special permit, but you still have to apply, you're still going to have to do this, and this, and submit this to us. And so the process may take a little longer, but, I think it'll still work very well. I was going to mention to you, one of the things that I've noticed in other cities that's visible is the, along the gateways, you can see now where there's landscaping, you know, in these newer facilities and these remodeled facilities. There's landscaping provided outside. The facades are so much more appropriate, you know, and less garishly designed with, you know, less, you know, bright and offending colors, and you don't have all these flags, you know, and pennants and balloons waving and stuff like that. You also have the interconnected parking lots and limited entrances and exits and all. So there's a lot of good that's come out of these ordinances in terms of cleaning up what was perceived to be, you know, a real problem, and a problem that we still have here, as you can see by the way we have driveways that are so closely connected. You have entrances and exits, just like the one at the Superfoods parking lot. That entrance right there is a major problem. We tried to tell DOTD that. People don't understand that it's a one-way, it's not an entry. You still have people making a left turn into that area, making a left, coming south from Parkinson. They'll still make a left turn into that entrance there where they're not supposed to. It's supposed to be a right turn only. They still come out of that turn, cut across and make a left from the, when they should be going north, they make a left and go south. So because of the way that the driveway is designed, and the entrance and the exit is so close together, and it's right there where you have a street exit coming on the other side, it's a conflict. It's one of those things that you see that other cities have had the problem, and they've addressed it in so many ways like that. So, but if you're going to do it, I think giving the planning commission, throwing it to the planning commission with the way ordinance would work, it would be something that, you know, if a prohibited use could be allowed.
First of all, what prompted this meeting? Did someone give you a call on the Pacific property or something?
It's been a topic that has been being discussed for months about particular desires in particular districts and the inability for a certain situation to arise given the gateway overlay having been adopted.
Well, the problem was, if I'm not mistaken, when we adopted this thing, if you remember, there was a public hearing on this. There was a public hearing.
I think there was, yes.
Yeah, there was.
There were several public hearings. This took a while. It took a lot of meetings, as I recall.
That's correct. So if they had a problem at that time, that should have been addressed at that time. In case y'all don't know, the Planning Commission is just an advisory committee. They don't have any power for us whatsoever, okay? And I'm listening to y'all, and I'm trying to figure out why would anybody challenge something? How long has this thing been approved?
It was adopted in, I believe, 2007.
Okay, here we are almost in 2020. Look, the problem that we have in this city is everybody wants to do what they want to do with their own property. This city, those who were on the council at that time, our obligation was to do what's best for the city. I remember when we talked about it, it stopped at Northern, if you remember, Lyle. Remember, it came from I-10 to Northern. There was never a mention of what's going on the west, okay? But it was brought up. If it's good for the gander, it's good for the goose. Now, if they, like Tom said, if they do the individual concept, we'd be here for 6 months and 5 years, because everybody's going to want to come in front of this council and challenge the system. Now, I don't know who, when, or where, or what their problem is, but I mean, the ruling has been stated. Okay, this is a part of our, want to say, our rule of order right now. But I mean, it's always good to listen to people, but if you do one, guess what? You can have people coming back that said, hold up here. When I wanted to do so-and-so, y'all didn't let me. Then all of a sudden, they got 5 lawyers with suitcases walking through that door. Because all they got to do is show there's a collusion done. And think about it. If we didn't do it for J, why are we going to do it for Z? Okay? And all they got to do is prove one thing. If I would have had my business over there, I would have made $10 million at that time. And I'm not a lawyer, but like I say, I watch a lot. Okay? So I'm just saying, we have to be very careful with this, because when you get to changing ordinances, that's real tricky, because you got people sitting in the cut waiting. You know, yeah, they done this to me. They'll slip up one time. And so that's just my opinion.
Right.
Oh, I hear what you say, Step, and basically what I envision is that in all zoning districts, commercial C1, C2, C3, R1, all the way to R4, you have the prerogative to seek a zoning variance or conditional use permit in all zoning districts. Within this gateway overlay district, it seems that that's prohibited. So we are not being consistent. What I would like to see is that we amend that gateway overlay ordinance to permit zoning variances and conditional use permits that are allowed in all zoning districts currently. Right now, I understand that it's prohibited in the gateway overlay, but it's allowed in all others. So all I'm saying is that let's go and give the property owners opportunity to go through the planning commission and come to the council for a conditional use permit within the gateway overlay districts, not just one, but all of them, with certainly the council giving the final approval.
Let me say, it's not prohibited in the gateway ordinance, it is just not provided in the gateway ordinance overlay districts. The overlay districts are designed as a special, there's a special overlay. It's a separate concept, and the idea is not to allow variation and special permits to be granted. Once you have that, as Mr. Martin says, you are, and as Clint and I were just discussing, everybody has the same right, and under a special condition or a special variance, a conditional use permit, that if you remember, if you read the ordinance, all similarly situated properties have to be treated the same way. So everybody who had a special situation, let's say had an old service station or had a used car lot, could come in and say, I had the same thing, and you turned me down. And we've already done that here, as you might remember. And therefore, the possibility of discrimination, lawsuits, and things like that we've required all along Oddfellows Road. You can see the improvement on the north side of the road, how those buildings were constructed with landscaping, facade improvement, design plans that were attractive, and you had parking lot entrances and exits that were approved by the city and the state. You don't have the development yet of everything interconnected, but that would be one of the things. You would have the interconnection requirements. So you notice that all the driveway connections are at the property line, so that you can control driveway intersections and stuff like that. So all that stuff is in the ordinance. It has been submitted by others who've designed new buildings. It has been submitted by others who've reopened other buildings. That goes. You're saying you're giving a use that didn't apply in the first place. In the case of those who had the use, we've already turned them down. So just to give you a perspective on where that comes from and why there's a difference, it becomes a futile act, because then you've given everybody the same privilege to come in and ask for a special use permit, and that's what I say. Everybody, I think, would do that, and if you do that, it would have to be that way, that you give everybody the same opportunity, because but I say it removes the gateway concept almost totally, and it is only a recommendation by the planning commission. The planning commission can only recommend to you whether or not you grant a conditional use or not. You could override the planning commission. In this case, the ordinance is designed to say, well, this is what you have to follow. And there are no exceptions, because it's not designed to have exceptions. But you can do it. I mean, I'm not saying you can't do it. It's just not a design feature of this type of a special district.
Well, my recommendation is to amend the gateway ordinance to allow for consideration of zoning variances and conditional use permits through the same channels that any other zoning variance or conditional use permit would be applicable to in that particular zoning district. It's got to keep it simple and straightforward.
The way I see it is, there's so many variations of car lots, used car dealerships. You know, you could have used car dealerships that's selling junk vehicles, two or three, and you maybe got CarMax wants to come in and open up in Crowley. What are you going to tell them? No, they can't come? They can't come and locate in the district? Same way with the car wash. You look at a car wash, you might have a guy with a bucket with a bottle of Dawn who wants to open up a car wash, but then you might have a sudsy car wash that wants to open up a car wash. There's two different things, and I think this council has the foresight and the intelligence enough to make a decision on whether one would be good for Crowley or the other one wouldn't be good for Crowley. That's all I'm saying. I'm saying there's so many, you know, you're cut and dry in this ordinance saying no car washes. Well, guess what? There might be a car wash that wants to come in like a Sudsy that's a economic boost to the city, or a CarMax. Just think, if they wanted to locate where this other car dealership wanted to locate, if they wanted to put a CarMax right there in that big parking lot or something, we're going to tell them they can't do that? You can't come in here and bring in millions of dollars of revenue in a year because of an overlay ordinance, and it's cut and dry, and it's a definitely no? I don't think that's right. I think we should have some say-so in what comes and what doesn't come. Just my opinion.
Well, maybe I got the wrong concept here. Okay? I thought that this meeting was called to basically give the layout of what the ordinance has in place now. I have one question here I would ask. You got an example right here with this guy in South Crowley and South Parkinson. He went through everything. He had signatures of all the people and everything. Is that property still available? Do anybody know if that property is still available? I think it's over. Okay. All right. This is my opinion. Am I hearing that we want to change it to basically bring the requirements not down, but make every individual question? In other words, this is mine, can I do it? Okay. You just, a perfect example. That's what woke me up. I mean, I'm like, well, hold up here. Maybe I'm on the wrong side of this. If we can, I don't know if this guy is still in Crowley or what have you, but this council has the power to go from this point on. We have the power to do that. And I would say this to you right now, that's kudos to whomever put a yes vote on it for change, because as far as myself, I would definitely be voting yes, because I'm under, and listen to me, as far as myself, Byron, you hadn't had them headaches. I had everybody stopping me, who the hell are y'all to tell us what we can't do with our property? We on commercial property, and now you're telling me I can't do what with it, okay? So, with that being said, I would say this to the council. We can always start from, right now it's 4:30 right now, almost 4:30. We can start at 4:35 and say from this point on, every permit or request for land uses will be entertained. The power, I mean, the council has that power. Just like we voted in, we can vote for a change. So I'm sorry, I mean, I thought it was just basically, I wanted to let everybody know where we stood with that as far as how it came about. Because the public hearings, there were many people that wanted to come, but for whatever reason, they didn't come. So guess what? If you're not here, your voice is not heard. So at the time, Lyle, you remember, and Stephen, we done the best that we could with what we heard. So, I mean, if the council feels that, and I'm with you, man, these car washes are the biggest thing going right now, you know? And the ones that want the bucket and the dove, well, you come and show us how you're going to handle this. You understand? With drainage and everything, because you can't load your neighbor's yard with water. And you sure can't get in the street and whatever. So I would say this to kudos. If y'all want to change, my vote is yes. Thank you.
Yeah, I just wanted to add to what Clint was mentioning about like the CarMax, you know, and issues of discriminating what's been done in the past. Under the current overlays ordinance, you could sell used car with it's in the gateway overlay as long as you're a new car dealer. However, the guy that comes like a CarMax, which is a first-class used car nationwide facility, you can tell them they can't? But, I'm not looking at you, Steph, but I'm just saying that I think the council should have the final say and be allowed to consider variances and conditional use permits.
I have to tell you, I do not disagree with anything anyone has said here today. But I've had the opportunity to visit with Mr. Reagan a number of times prior to today, and if I am voicing what has been basically brought to my attention is, I think this council needs to proceed extremely carefully with regard to putting itself in a position of selectively approving and disapproving certain requests. I think that's precisely the point that we are facing lawsuit number 1, and here comes number 200. And before we would put ourselves in a position like that, I would say abandon the whole thing and start over. I mean, I can't dispute what any of you are saying with regard to, it's basically a strangle on new business. It's a preventative to new business because it's not the kind of business that is desired. Well, you know, I'm not going to argue against that at all, because I think business is business. It's revenue, it's employment, it's taxes, it's everything. But by the same token, we've had a number of problems in this community that we've had to address with nightclubs and participants running into buildings and, you know, with burglaries and just with problems. And there isn't a quick fix to anything, but I'm sorry, Tom?
Let me say this. Anything you do, I think, needs to be treated everybody fairly. That's the whole point of this. And one of my concerns is, how do you do that selectiveness and also? And it occurs to me that rather than have prohibition of certain things, that may have been the concept, like Clint says, we were talking about car washes, that people had the old designs, these new designs, you know, that in these CarMaxes make it a whole lot more palatable in terms of what you're looking at. Therefore, you know, in the same concept, it would seem to me it would be applicable to all the other prohibited uses. What I would suggest, and either way you have to do it, you have to do an amendment to the ordinance to allow this. So it'll take that 90-day period to do this, but my suggestion would be to just simply repeal the prohibited uses. That would accomplish the same thing. Let it all go to the planning commission, and you'll have the planning commission impose those requirements. You know, everybody's got to do the same thing. You got to submit a land use plan. You got to submit, you know, it doesn't have to be elaborate. I was telling Lyle, somebody, you know, if they choose to hand draw their own plan, show their driveway proposal, show their landscaping proposal, show their facade, what they're going to do, what colors they're going to paint it, you know, what kind of material they want to use or whatever. I think if you do that, it applies to everybody, and let it go to the planning commission. Any property within that district, you know, you want to change, you know, if you want a building permit, Tony's got to tell them, first thing you got to do is go to the planning commission. Here are the requirements you have to submit to the planning commission. Tony's office tells them that. We do a simple amendment, you know, just wiping out there won't be any prohibited uses. You know, where we eliminate the problem of the selectiveness of the council, you know, trying to say, well, we're going to give a special conditional use to one person and not to another. I think that would solve the entire problem.
I think that's the smartest thing said. Tim?
That's why you're paying me so much.
I totally, I know I don't have any say-so, but I totally agree with that. And also to keep in mind that there are subdivisions that do have restrictions. So I'm just putting that out there.
Kim?
How does that affect the businesses already in place? It doesn't, so they just continue.
Anybody who's continue doing what they're doing, if they want to make a change, if they want to do it, I'm sorry. It does not affect anybody who's in business presently. They can continue doing exactly what they're doing right now. Nothing changed there. It's when somebody wants to make a change to the building or make a change to their use that they have to go get a building permit. You know, then Tony's got to look at it and say, Well, you know, if you're repairing a bathroom and you're gonna use the building for the same use, then you're not going to go and do, if you're gonna do change, if you're changing out, electrical service for some reason, you know, or something like that, you're not gonna need this kind of, but if you're doing that to accommodate a new use of the building, let's say you're going from a beauty shop to a car wash, you know, or you're going to a mechanic shop, well, yeah, you need to submit all this.
And that is stipulated already in the ordinance?
What you've got in the ordinance, if you look at 3.14.4 and the subsequent sections, 14, 12, 11, all that, 09, 14, 09, 14, 11, all of those are requirements, you know, either the lighting, the parking lot, the building materials, the facade, the mechanical equipment, where all that has to be located. Right, which, you know, we had people putting dumpsters on the streets. Well, we don't want that now, you know? You have, you have to get them back off the edge of the street. We put them, you know, we require a screened-in area, you know. Bow Plaza, for instance, has all of that. You have it, when they initially designed it, they were using city right-of-way. No, you can't. You got to use your property. You have to put a fence around it. You have to control it. You can't, you know, just you can't just throw trash in. You have to have a dumpster. It has to be controlled. That would apply everywhere, you know? So all those conditions that you see in here, let the planning commission tell these people that, okay, this is what we'll approve or not approve. And then it comes to you with a recommendation, you know, to approve the site plan.
You know, I'm listening to this, and we forgot the main element of all this. If somebody want to put something in a certain neighborhood, you call a public hearing, the people are going to tell you whether they want it there or not, okay? We don't have to say yea or nay to them. We call for a public hearing, and if nobody shows, well, hey, if nobody shows, that's a yes to me, okay? So, I mean, we talking this, but one thing I would like to keep telling, I don't know if we can amend this ordinance or, like you said, do away with it. When people coming into Crowley, and I'm talking a certain area, I'm not calling, you come in from Highway 90 coming across west, there ain't no way to be greeted coming into the city of Crowley. I think this council needs to reserve the right to say anybody that's on the threshold of the entrance, when the sign say, welcome to Crowley, I think that there should be stipulations that if you're going to do a business, then the council should come in. Tom, I don't know how that would be written, and we have to give you mandates of whatever you bring, we want to see what it is. It has to be inducive to welcoming people to Crowley. You know, don't put what they call that over there, the X-rated movie house, you understand, at the entrance of Crowley, you know? But I would say if we can do something like that, that'll show that the integrity is still there, that the council still has a hold on the rope, but it also let them know, hey, it's your neighborhood, you tell us what you want in your neighborhood. You know, that just a little FYI right there.
In order to address this thought occurs to me, that we could also, but again, in addition to repealing it, that those provisions, that we would insert a provision that at the council's option, even with the planning commission's approval, that it would require a public hearing. That would be applied to all districts. And also, you know, I think if we do that, we add a public hearing, we delete all of the prohibited uses and allow the council an option to call for a public hearing to receive public comment on on the thing, would be a way to avoid any controversy. And as Steph says, you get the public input, you know, and once you've had that, you can make an informed decision. And if you haven't got any opposition, well, you know it's a no-brainer.
If I can make one comment, you know, look, we're all sitting here listening. The problem is not the gateway overlay program itself, it's the restrictions that have been placed in it. That's where we're having the problems. And if we could remove the restrictions and allow the gateway to provide the purpose and reasoning for it, and we selectively deal with these issues, just like the Planning Commission would, I think it's a win-win for everybody, potentially. Mayor?
Thank you, Mr. Fogelman. I agree with Mr. Martin. At the beginning, Mr. Martin, like Mr. Martin says, we have somebody checking the checker. You know, we have the Planning Commission. First of all, it has to be done by review and code enforcement. Then you have it's presented to the Planning Commission, and then once they okay it, it still has to come before the City Council. So, you know what, we have a bunch of people checking the checker, and that's a great idea.
With public hearings.
Yes.
Clint?
And one thing that just jumped out at me was that when Tom said something about enclosing trash bins, and if you'll put that in your agenda, that we can, thank you, because I sure would like to address that issue.
There's one that's not, I'm sorry, I haven't been recognized, but there is one that is not, and I did write it down. Yes, thank you.
Well, is there anyone else that has anything in particular? I think some great headway's been made here this afternoon. Mayor?
Yes, sir. If everybody is in agreement, we can amend the agenda. This is what I was going to recommend. Right, so we amend the agenda for this evening, and that way you can introduce the ordinance recommendation or the ordinance change recommendation. We can't vote on it tonight, but you can introduce it. Okay?
Joan, can I just say ditto to that?
Just, you're going to amend,
Yes, I move to amend the agenda to introduce the ordinance to authorizing to prepare an ordinance to amend the gateway overlay.
introduction. And I need a second by Ms. Stringfellow.
Any further discussion?
There you go.
Tom, just enlighten me in this. Aren't we supposed to close this discussion and then go into that?
He just,
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, we have to close this discussion.
okay.
Okay, because
We
you
kinda
can't-
did.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, but you can't bring this is a discussion item, you can't bring that to a full council.
Well, we just amended the agenda
But you
to
gotta
do so.
close, the discussion. It has to
Okay, if
close
you
it.
want to officially, okay, we'll
All
close.
right, we closed the
Close discussion.
discussion,
Okay,
technically, and then what we reopened with
Well, you're gonna ask-
with the motion.
you're going to
we-
introduce a
I
motion to
request-
amend the agenda.
Do I have to request that we be able to amend the agenda? No?
You're making a motion to
I
amend
make
the
a motion
agenda.
to amend the agenda to come up with a ordinance to amend the Gateway Overlay District.
Introduction.
Introduction.
And now I'm
And we-
looking, you
we
made
have a
the motion.
second.
Made the motion, and Ms. Stringfellow seconded to amend the agenda. And now,
Any more
now we
discussion?
can open discussion for that particular item.
I
Okay,
just
all,
wanna tell Lyle Fogelman, don't you miss this meeting, buddy. I'm telling you.
Okay,
keep me in line, Steph, all right.
I said,
All right,
"Yeah, crutches
all,
over there, just-
all,
you all right?"
all zoning and annex committee members vote on this only.
That's correct.
All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion carries.
and please,
Making a lot of people
okay, they're on here.
I'm serious, man.
Yeah, they're on here. Mr. Vogelman, Mr. Morton, Mr. Reggie, Ms. Stringfellow, and Mr. Primo. All those said aye? Yes. Okay,
That's it.
all right. Press your button.
Oh, the press.
There a motion, but I see Desiree has a question.
I just want to make sure that I'm clear with y'all. Y'all want to change to repeal the prohibitions of the gateway ordinance.
We want to potentially review the appeal. Is this correct? To review?
Well, I think you want to, my recommendation would be to, as I said, repeal the all prohibited uses, and to then also provide, as Mr. Martin pointed out, an option for the council to require a public hearing on any type of application for a change, and that the council would then have to receive public comment first before you could make a decision on that. Is that correct? Is that correct, Step? Okay.
Right. We are introducing it, and then now we're going to set a public hearing. Correct.
That's the recommendation to the full council.
Right. We're going to recommend it.
Do we have the public hearing to do this first, or do we do the?
You got to go to the full council.
You have to authorize me to go ahead and prepare the amendments to the ordinance. We'll have that for you, and you recommend that, at this meeting coming up, which would be the 9th, I think, is that right?
11.
The 11th, I'm sorry, the 11th, the regular meeting is the 11th. This committee is making the recommendation to proceed with amending the ordinance, so that's what you're asking, be done, okay? And then we have the public hearing, yes, sir. Then you introduce the ordinance. I'll try to have it for you, everything that I can. I'll try to have everything prepared so that by the 11th, so that you could amend the agenda and say, okay, not only did Mr. Reagan proceeded to do this in anticipation of a favorable vote because everybody here voted for that. So there was a majority already established in favor of this. So I think it's proper for me to probably take it in hand and just run with it and see what I can come up with. And hopefully we'll have it ready and we can amend the agenda at the regular meeting also to actually introduce it that night and then call for the public hearing, okay?
Yeah, and then it has to be at full council.
Yeah, that would be at full council.
Okay, you just said something that just jogged a memory. We have to bring this in committee.
This is committee.
That's what I'm saying. But you
This
just
is
mentioned
committee.
that before meeting, we have to bring it in committee, allow you have to introduce it in committee, we vote on it, tell me if I'm wrong, let me know. And then we bring it to the full council meeting for the public hearing.
Well, what I'm saying, let me say, what I'm saying, Step, is this, that I could if I can, it's a little bit short notice on this, I'm just still kind of mulling it all over as to how to do it.
Okay.
Because you got to think about how you amend an ordinance so you don't affect something, doing some things that you meant to do, sometimes you unwittingly do something that you didn't really think about, so I need.
But we can still give you permission to go ahead and do that.
Yeah, we
tomorrow.
could,
That's what I'm saying.
that's what the plan is, and if possible, I'll have a draft ready for you to introduce.
Oh, you can
on-
have that,
and-
Tom.
and
You can
then-
have that.
And then, at the regular meeting, you can always amend the agenda at the regular meeting to introduce it. So I think it'll work out perhaps, and maybe not, but I'll do the best I can.
I apologize, I forgot tomorrow is a committee meeting. I'm serious, man. No, okay, well. Huh?
Is there anything else to come before this committee this afternoon? If not, we're going to make a record, people. 45 minutes. And then we lost 10 waiting for the new wire, so we adjourn. Thank you.
And I want to make, it's a pleasure being here, I'm glad to be back, and hopefully I
Thank
get
you,
some
Tom.
good advice to you.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Tom.
You know what?
And ladies and
That's
gentlemen,
gonna make a
please
lot
don't
of
forget
people
tomorrow evening at 6 o'clock, Christmas in Crowley.
People happy right there. When that thing was written, it took away a lot of people's rights, bro.
Does that take the liability off of us?
Yes, because look,
Karen will take care of all that.
look, this is the way it's going.
Or just let this go through?
We gonna make the final
Yeah, I
decision.
understand.